You're late, Amara. Victoria snapped as the silver Mercedes slid through the morning fog on Fifth Avenue. If this deal falls through, it's not just a bad day, it's my career. The city was still waking, its skyline veiled in mist, the hum of traffic echoing off the glass towers. Amara's hands were steady on the wheel, her reflection faint in the windshield. "We'll make it, ma'am," she said softly, eyes flicking to the clock on the dashboard. 8:57 a.m. 9 minutes until the meeting that could either cement Hale and Meridian's legacy or end it. Victoria Hale, 55, elegant in a charcoal suit, tapped her diamond watch impatiently. "You know how these foreign partners are if we're not on time, they think we're amateurs." She took a sip of her black coffee, grimaced, and muttered, "God, why do you drive so slow?" "We're doing 60 in a 40 zone, ma'am," Amara replied, her voice calm, unshaken. "Then drive like someone who understands what $500 million looks like," Victoria hissed. The Mercedes surged forward, tires whispering against the wet asphalt. The world outside was all motion and reflection. Yellow cabs slicing through puddles, office towers mirrored in glass, pedestrians wrapped in scarves and urgency. Amara stole a glance in the rearview mirror. Victoria sat stiffly, scrolling through the slides on her tablet, mouthing numbers under her breath. There was a fragile tension between them, the kind that years of hierarchy had woven tight. To Victoria, Amara was staff, a reliable shadow who appeared, drove, poured, disappeared. To Amara, Victoria was a paycheck, a storm to navigate, and, secretly, a lesson in restraint. "You know," Victoria said suddenly, eyes still on her screen. "If this contract doesn't go through, I'll have to let some people go. Accounting, catering, maybe even drivers." The words landed like stones. Amara didn't answer. She had heard it before, veiled warnings disguised as conversation. The Mercedes turned onto Madison Avenue, merging into a river of suits and briefcases. At 9:08, they pulled under the glass canopy of Hale and Meridian Tower. Security guards straightened as the car rolled to a stop. Victoria gathered her folders, smoothed her jacket, and opened the door without looking back. "Park it underground. Wait for my call," she said. "Yes, ma'am." Amara watched her stride through the revolving doors, head high, heels striking marble like a metronome of power. Then she exhaled and eased the car toward the ramp. The garage swallowed the light. She parked in section C4, next to a black Tesla that gleamed like a mirror. For a moment she sat there, listening to the ticking engine. She thought about the woman she'd just driven, the way power made people forget softness. Her phone buzzed. A message from the building system. Driver access permitted to executive floor. Conference support requested urgent. She frowned. Probably a mistake. But protocol was protocol. She slipped out of the car, fixed her uniform jacket, and took the service elevator up. At 9:12, the doors opened onto the 61st floor. The conference room was all glass and steel, floating above Manhattan. The skyline blazed behind it like a painting. Inside, 20 people were already seated, executives from Japan, Germany, France, and the Middle East. On the main screen, $500 million. Meridian, Shinwa joint venture. Victoria was standing at the head of the table, voice clipped, cold. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "this partnership will redefine our global strategy if we can stop arguing over punctuation." Then, seeing Amara with a tray of fresh coffee, she frowned. "Oh, for heaven's sake, why is she in here? This is a boardroom, not a diner." "They asked for someone to refill drinks, ma'am," Amara said quietly. Security said, "Just stay out of the way." Victoria cut her off. "We're trying to save $500 million here." Amara nodded, stepping aside. But her ears caught the rhythm of the room, the tense shuffle of papers, the rising voices. Something about the words liability clause and German annex snapped her attention awake. "This clause is unacceptable," said Takahashi, the lead negotiator from Shinwa, his English smooth and deliberate. "It transfers all risk to us. We will withdraw if this stands." "That's not possible," said Frederick Lang, the deputy legal officer. His smile polished, his confidence rehearsed. "Our translation is accurate." "No," interrupted the German counsel, adjusting his glasses. "It says non-liability, not non-recourse. That is not the same." The room went still. Victoria's knuckles whitened on the table edge. "You're nitpicking." Takahashi checked his watch. "We have 10 minutes before we leave." 9. Victoria corrected, and glared toward Amara, as if even the air around her was guilty. The maid felt invisible heat rise in her chest. She'd seen this before: mistakes buried in paperwork, truth dismissed by tone. She glanced at the printed annex, and saw it instantly. The watermark code at the bottom: 8:54 a.m. A translation from the outdated software she once used in college. Her pulse quickened. That single word, nicked Haftung, was wrong. Intentionally wrong. The deal was about to implode. And no one noticed. "Sumimasen," Amara said softly in Japanese. Heads turned. Takahashi blinked. The room froze. "There's a mistranslation," she continued, her voice calm but certain. "The German annex changes legal meaning. It removes your protection." Lang scoffed. "You're not part of this meeting." "Maybe not," she said, "but I can read." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Amara, enough." But Takahashi lifted a hand. "Let her speak." The next words left Amara's lips with quiet precision. German. Then French. Then Japanese. She traced the clause on the screen, showing how non-recourse had been twisted into no liability, how the legal intent had been inverted. Silence consumed the room. The red digits on the wall clock ticked down. 9:06. Victoria's authority cracked like glass under pressure. Lang's face paled. "This is absurd." "No," Amara said, steady. "This is the truth." Somewhere outside, a low bark echoed in the corridor. The building's therapy dog, Samson, stationed for stress relief. He stopped near Lang's briefcase, sniffing, growling. The security guard frowned, kneeling down. Inside, a small recording device blinked red. Lang froze. "That's not..." Takahashi stood. "Your own employee just protected this meeting's integrity." He turned to Victoria. "Perhaps you should listen to her." Victoria didn't answer. Her gaze drifted to the woman she'd just insulted, the maid who had driven her here, brewed her coffee, and now, in flawless languages, had just saved her company. Outside, New York glittered like a truth rising through clouds. The clock hit 9:05, and Amara, still holding the tray, whispered under her breath. "Words are binding, lies are too." For a moment, no one moved. Even Victoria's breath caught. The storm had found its eye. The meeting broke apart in slow motion, a chorus of startled murmurs and shuffling papers, but Amara stood still, her tray clutched like a shield. Victoria's voice came, sharp and low. "Get out." It was not a scream, it was worse. It was the voice of someone who had just realized the world had shifted without her permission. Amara bowed her head slightly, left the tray on a side table, and slipped through the glass door into the corridor. The hum of the city was faint even from 60 floors up. She could still feel the weight of their eyes, the disbelief that a maid had spoken the truth. She pressed the elevator button and waited, her heart pounding. When the doors closed around her, she finally exhaled. The elevator hummed downward, a metallic heartbeat counting the moments since her life had quietly cracked open. She didn't know if she'd just saved her job or destroyed it. Her hands trembled, so she clasped them together, whispering the words her mother always said. "Calm mind. Steady breath. Truth doesn't shout, it endures." As she descended, her reflection flickered on the mirrored walls. The crisp uniform, the company badge marked private service, the faint coffee stain on her sleeve, none of it matched the voice she had just used. 10 floors down, she pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her mother's handkerchief beneath the fabric, soft and warm from body heat. The same cloth, embroidered with 10 languages, each phrase a thread of her past. The elevator stopped at the lobby. She didn't step out. She needed a moment. The marble floor gleamed beyond the doors. Executives passed, never noticing her. 5 years earlier, she would have been one of them or close enough to believe she belonged. Atlanta. Summer light. The campus library. Amara Johnson. Age 25. Scholarship student in linguistics. Speaking 10 tongues and dreaming in all of them. Her professors said she had a gift. She could hear meaning beneath words, sense emotion in rhythm. "You'll be the youngest interpreter in the State Department," one had said. But then her mother got sick. Ovarian cancer. treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. Amara left school 2 semesters shy of her degree. She moved north, took whatever job she could find, first hotel housekeeping, then driving for the private network that served the city's elite. That's how she met Victoria Hale. Back then, Victoria was still the grieving widow of a corporate titan. She needed someone discreet, someone invisible. Amara was perfect at being invisible. She learned the routes, the moods, the silences. She learned when to speak and when to vanish. For 4 years she had driven that Mercedes through every kind of weather, holding her tongue while her passengers spoke of mergers, scandals, and men who underestimated her. Victoria was brilliant but ruthless. There was no middle ground. And yet Amara had admired her until admiration turned into caution. The elevator pinged again. A man stepped in, a security officer, tall, kind-eyed. "Miss Johnson," he said quietly. "The CEO asked me to bring you back up." Amara blinked. "Back up?" she said now. His tone was neutral, unreadable. The doors slid shut again, the floor numbers climbing. When they opened, the atmosphere on 61 had changed. The tension in the conference room was heavy but focused. The partners had stayed. Takahashi and the German counsel were reviewing the annexes, their expressions wary but respectful. Lang was gone, escorted out by compliance officers, his briefcase sealed in a clear evidence bag. Victoria stood at the window, arms folded, staring out at the city. Her voice came without turning. "Sit down, Amara." The maid hesitated. "Ma'am, Sit." Amara obeyed, perching on the edge of a chair at the far end of the table. Victoria turned slowly, her face composed but pale. "You embarrassed me," she said. The words were measured, but the fury beneath them was visible. "You spoke out of turn in front of international partners, undermined my counsel, and turned my meeting into a circus." Amara swallowed. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't mean to." "But," Victoria interrupted, "you were right." The silence that followed was thick, almost human. Victoria looked at her for the first time not as a shadow, but as a person. Takahashi confirmed it. The German text was altered. The file timestamp matches Lang's login. "You probably saved us from signing a fraud." She paused, then added with a reluctant exhale. "I should thank you. But I don't know how." Amara's instinct was to lower her gaze. "You don't need to, ma'am." "I do," Victoria said, softer now. "Because the truth is, I saw you this morning as someone who drives my car and pours my coffee. I didn't see the woman who just negotiated in 3 languages under pressure." Amara looked up. "I didn't negotiate. I just told the truth." Victoria's lips curved into a tired smile. "Sometimes that's harder than any negotiation." The intercom buzzed. The assistant outside announced, "Ma'am, the partners request to reconvene in 30 minutes. They're drafting an amended clause." "Tell them I'll be there," Victoria replied. Then looked back at Amara. "I'll need you in that room again." Amara blinked. "Ma'am? They trust you. You'll review the wording. Just don't talk unless I say so." It was half command, half apology. Amara nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Victoria turned away, but her voice softened at the window. "Do you always speak that many languages?" "Only when people aren't listening," Amara said, almost smiling. A faint laugh escaped Victoria's throat, the kind that sounded strange even to herself. "Get some water," she said. "And thank you, Amara." When Amara stepped out, the corridor seemed wider. The city below brighter. The adrenaline still buzzed through her. She leaned against the glass, looking down at the blur of yellow taxis, the veins of Manhattan traffic pulsing beneath. She thought of her mother in the small apartment in Queens, waiting for her call. She would tell her nothing yet. Maybe later, when it was real. Downstairs in the cafeteria, people whispered. The story had already started to spread. The maid who corrected $1 million clause. Some said she'd saved the deal. Others said she'd doomed her career. Amara didn't listen. She bought a small cup of coffee, the cheap kind that reminded her of college nights, and sat by the window. Her reflection in the glass looked older, steadier. She remembered her mother's words again. "Respect doesn't come from titles. It comes from how you stand when the world expects you to kneel." Her phone buzzed, a message from the company server. "Meeting rescheduled." Executive assistant to a company CEO and linguistic consultant. She stared at the last words. Linguistic consultant. Not maid. The label lingered in her mind as she rode the elevator back up. When she entered the boardroom again, the energy had shifted completely. Victoria greeted her with a nod, not warmth but acknowledgement. Takahashi rose slightly and said, "Miss Johnson, your input was invaluable." The German counsel added, "You prevented an international scandal." Victoria interjected briskly, "Let's focus. We'll finalize this clause now." But her tone carried less venom. She gestured to the seat beside her. "You'll sit here." Amara sat, silent, her pulse a steady drum. The table gleamed beneath the fluorescent light. The amended clause appeared on the screen. Non-recourse liability shall not be construed as non-liability in any language version. It was simple, precise. The world, for once, made sense in its wording. When the partners signed the corrected document an hour later, applause rippled politely. Victoria shook hands, posed for photos, her smile mechanical but her eyes alive. As the meeting ended, she turned to Amara and whispered, $500 million saved. Remind me never to underestimate you again." Amara nodded. "You won't need to, ma'am." Outside, the winter sun broke through the clouds, glinting on the glass towers. The city had no idea what had just happened inside that room, a quiet act of courage, a crack in the wall of arrogance. As Amara walked toward the elevator, she caught her reflection one more time. Not just the maid who drove the Mercedes, but the woman who had spoken truth to power and been heard. She touched the handkerchief in her pocket. The embroidery in German brushed her fingertips. Wort ist Bindung. Words are binding. She smiled faintly. Maybe, for once, they had been. The next morning, Manhattan wore its usual mask of purpose. The towers gleamed as if nothing had happened, as if a company hadn't nearly lost $500 million 12 hours earlier. But inside Hale and Meridian Tower, the air felt different, charged, watchful, like the quiet that follows a storm. Amara pulled the Mercedes into the underground garage at 7:02 a.m., 30 minutes earlier than usual. Habit, maybe, or nerves. She didn't know whether yesterday had been a beginning or a countdown. The meeting had ended with handshakes and relief, but not all smiles were sincere. Frederick Lang had been escorted out, yes, but corporate ghosts never really left. They lingered in systems, in whispers, in the wary glances between departments. As she stepped out of the car, the echo of her heels on the concrete reminded her she was still out of place in this world. A maid who had become a rumor. Her badge now read, Consultant, Temp. She didn't know who had authorized the change, Victoria, or the system itself. But when the guard at the executive elevator greeted her with a, "Good morning, Miss Johnson," it startled her. She smiled awkwardly and nodded. Upstairs, the 61st floor smelled of fresh polish and caution. The glass conference room had been reset, the chairs realigned as if the chaos of yesterday could be wiped away with lemon-scented wipes. Victoria was already there, standing by the window with a coffee she hadn't touched. Her reflection looked older, maybe not in years but in awareness. "You're early," she said without turning. "So are you," Amara replied, setting her bag discreetly by the door. Victoria turned, a small half-smile forming, not warmth exactly, more like the ghost of humility. "Sleep didn't seem productive." "Me neither." "Coffee?" Victoria asked, gesturing toward the tray. "I can get it." Amara started, but Victoria waved her off. "No, I'll pour." The gesture, though small, landed like a shock. Victoria handed her a cup, steam curling between them. "They'll be here in 20 minutes, she said. "The board wants a debrief. They're curious about you." "Curious? In this building, that's both compliment and threat." Amara sipped quietly. "I understand." Victoria studied her for a long moment. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally. "And yet you're the only one I want in the room." Amara didn't know how to respond, so she said nothing. Outside the door, the floor buzzed with the subtle choreography of assistants and analysts. The world of power moved on caffeine and fear. When the board members filed in, they filled the space with expensive perfume and controlled voices. There were 12 of them, 10 men, 2 women, all older than 60, each carrying a pen that could end a career. "Victoria," said the chairman, Mr. Douglas Reed. Quite the performance yesterday. Saved the company's face. But you've got a problem. That clause didn't edit itself. Someone inside tampered with legal documents. That's a federal issue if we don't contain it. Victoria nodded. Lang's been suspended pending investigation. Suspended isn't enough, Reed said. If we have a mole, there could be others. We need to audit every legal revision for the past quarter. Already underway, Victoria said, glancing briefly toward Amara. Miss Johnson will assist. She has an eye for language detail. The room murmured. One of the directors, a gray-haired woman with a pearl necklace, frowned. The maid? Victoria's expression didn't waver. The consultant. Reed tilted his head. You trust her? I trust results. Reed grunted. Fine. But if this leaks, it's on you. The meeting dragged on with financial projections and reputational strategies. Amara listened quietly, absorbing the cadence of power. The art of polite manipulation. She noticed how truth was never denied outright. It was merely redirected. When the meeting adjourned, Reed lingered. Good work, Victoria, he said, lowering his voice. But remember, this company has eyes everywhere. Keep your driver out of the headlines. He left without looking at Amara. Victoria exhaled. He's not wrong, she said softly. If the press gets wind that my maid caught a multi-million-dollar fraud, I'll look like a fool. And they'll make you a novelty. Maybe that's better than being invisible, Amara said. Victoria looked at her sharply, then almost smiled. Touché. For the next few hours, they worked side by side, reviewing archived contracts. Amara moved through the documents like a surgeon, her mind parsing syntax faster than most could blink. She noticed patterns, subtle word swaps, timestamps altered by a few minutes, all linked to a hidden login ID. FL, Delta. Lang's shadow. Someone had helped him. She marked each discrepancy quietly until she had enough to see the shape of a network. You're not going to like this, she said finally. Victoria leaned over her shoulder. What am I looking at? Repeated edits across 4 projects. Always the same hour of day, different names attached. Someone's been laundering phrasing, changing risk clauses to favor competitors. Victoria's face hardened. Can you trace it? Not alone. IT can. I'll have them pull metadata. No, Amara said quickly. Don't alert them yet. If the mole's still inside, they'll erase everything. Victoria stared at her, then nodded slowly. You think like an investigator. I think like someone who's been lied to a lot. The line made Victoria pause. Something in her eyes softened a recognition she didn't expect. She turned away. Keep digging, she said. But quietly. If anyone asks, you're helping with translation. Understood. When noon came, they ate in the small lounge adjoining the boardroom. Sandwiches, bottled water, silence. The city glimmered below, endless and indifferent. You ever think about finishing school? Victoria asked suddenly. Amara blinked. I did. Once. You should. You're wasted driving people like me. I drive fine. That's not what I meant. Amara smiled faintly. Maybe someday. The elevator dinged. A young intern appeared with a sealed folder. For Miss Hale, he said nervously. Victoria opened it. Inside were 2 printed emails and a USB drive. She frowned. Anonymous delivery, she murmured. Subject line says, for the one who reads between words. She looked up at Amara. That sounds like you. Amara took the pages carefully. The emails were brief log entries from Lang's account, dated weeks before his exposure. Each included attached contracts sent to an external address with initials, RD. Who's RD? She asked. Victoria's jaw tightened. Richard Dalton. Former board member. Retired last year after a scandal in Singapore. He was my husband's mentor. Amara looked at her. So this isn't just fraud. It's personal. It's both, Victoria said grimly. And if Dalton's still involved, we're walking into something deeper than contracts. A cold hum ran through the room. The skyline outside looked different now, less like opportunity, more like camouflage. Amara folded the pages. What do you want to do? Victoria hesitated, then said. You and I will go through that drive tonight. After hours. No assistance? No IT. Ma'am, that's risky. So was speaking up yesterday. You seem to manage risk well. Their eyes met, equal parts challenge and respect. Amara nodded. Then we'll start at 8. Victoria's lips curved in agreement. Bring the Mercedes. No one questions a CEO and her driver leaving late. As Amara left the room, she passed the reflective glass wall where her faint outline lingered next to Victoria's. Two women from different worlds, both marked by pride and regret, both now bound by a secret. Down in the lobby, she stepped into the December air, cold and alive with sound. The streets roared with the rhythm of survival. She tightened her coat and thought of the words on her mother's handkerchief. Word ist Bindung. Words are binding. She had no idea yet how tightly those words were about to bind her. The city's skyline glowed like embers against the dusk when Amara pulled the Mercedes to the curb in front of Hale and Meridian Tower. The glass reflected streaks of amber and blue, the light of a place that never truly slept. She checked her watch. 7:50. 7 p.m. 3 minutes early. Victoria was punctual, but never early. The lobby was nearly empty now, the rush hour crowd thinned to a quiet hum of cleaners and security guards. As Amara waited in the driver's seat, she watched the reflection of herself in the window, still in uniform, still the help, but something beneath that image had changed. Yesterday she would have waited silently. Tonight she felt like she was waiting for the truth. At exactly 8, the revolving doors parted and Victoria emerged, wrapped in a gray wool coat, her heels clicking like a metronome on marble. She carried a slim leather briefcase and wore no jewelry except her watch. Her hair was tied back, severe and immaculate. She opened the passenger door herself, an unusual break in habit. "Let's go," she said, sliding in. Amara nodded, easing the car into the quiet night traffic. "Where to, ma'am?" "The storage annex," Victoria said. "We keep old files there off. Books, contracts, physical backups. If Dalton's name appears in those archives, I want to see it before compliance does." "You don't trust your own people?" "I trust no one who smiles during audits." Amara allowed herself a tiny smirk. "So that's everyone." "Exactly." The Mercedes glided down Park Avenue, lights blurring past like falling stars. The radio played soft jazz, low enough to let thoughts breathe. Victoria broke the silence first. "You know," she said quietly, "Richard Dalton was the first man to believe in me when I was 26. He convinced my husband to promote me. After Harold died, Dalton was the first to offer condolences, and the first to suggest I sell the company." "You didn't," Amara said. "Because it was mine," Victoria replied, her tone flinty. "Or I thought it was." They drove in silence for a while, the weight of what wasn't said heavy between them. When they reached the annex, an unmarked building on the edge of the East River, security lights cast long white beams across the lot. The facility looked more like a warehouse than a corporate archive. Inside, the air smelled of paper and metal. Rows of file cabinets stretched like corridors of memory. Victoria used her keycard. And the heavy door clicked open. "You've been here before?" Amara asked. "Once," Victoria said. "When my husband died. I needed to find his last will before the board did." They walked deeper into the archive, their footsteps muffled by industrial carpet. Victoria's flashlight beam danced across labels. Contracts 2017, Legal 2018, JV. East Asia. Finally she stopped at a cabinet marked Confidential. Dalton files. Her jaw tightened. "Help me with this." Together they slid open the drawer. Inside were folders stamped with corporate logos, projects spanning Singapore, Dubai, Zurich. Victoria pulled one marked, Meridian Global Fund, and flipped through the pages. "This fund was closed after Harold's death," she murmured. "Dalton told me the assets were liquidated." She stopped, her finger tracing a line. "But this says transfer, Lang, F, 2021. "Lang?" Amara said. "So the deputy counsel worked with Dalton?" "It looks that way." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "God. I was blind." Amara studied the pages. The documents were multilingual English headers with Arabic annotations and Japanese side notes. She leaned closer. "Wait. These side remarks, they're instructions. Each one alters a clause before it's sent out. Someone hid operational orders in translation notes." How do you know? Because I used to write them that way in class, Amara said. It's how you teach syntax shifts without being noticed. Victoria gave her a look that was half awe, half suspicion. So Lang used translation layers to hide fraud. No, Amara said slowly. Dalton used Lang. She pulled another folder. Scanning signatures. Look, Dalton's name isn't on anything. But each file routes to a private holding company registered in the Caymans. That's where the stolen margins went. And now Lang's gone, Dalton's retired, and I'm the only one left to take the fall. Victoria said bitterly. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. We can report this, Amara said. Not yet, Victoria replied. If we go public without proof, the board will bury it in me. We need the digital link from the USB. She reached into her coat and produced the small drive. Let's see if your instincts were right. They found a terminal in the back office, dusty but functional. The screen flickered to life, casting a pale glow across their faces. Victoria inserted the drive. Folders filled the display: PDFs, scanned documents, and a video file labeled RD, Conf, 2022. Play it, Victoria said. The video opened to a conference room, different from theirs but unmistakably corporate. Richard Dalton sat across from Frederick Lang. They spoke quietly, unaware of the camera hidden behind the wall panel. Dalton's voice was low and deliberate. She won't notice, he said. She's too focused on saving the company's image. Slip the clause into the annex, one word, no one checks the foreign copy. By the time it unravels, she'll be gone. Lang nodded nervously. And the board? They'll back her removal. Fear works faster than scandal. The video ended abruptly. For a long time, neither woman spoke. Victoria's hands trembled slightly as she removed the drive. They tried to destroy me, she whispered. They tried to turn my own pride into their weapon. Amara's voice was calm. They failed. Victoria looked at her. For now. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly down the hall. Both women froze. We're not alone, Amara said. The steps grew louder, measured. Deliberate. Victoria killed the monitor. The room plunged into shadow. Amara moved quickly, guiding her toward a side aisle. This way. They slipped between cabinets, the narrow space filled with the scent of old paper and dust. The footsteps stopped. Then a male voice, deep and composed, called out, "You shouldn't have come here, Victoria." Victoria's breath hitched. "Dalton," she whispered. The voice came closer. "You were always too curious. I thought grief made you pliable. I was wrong." A flashlight beam swept past, catching the edge of Victoria's coat. Amara stepped forward, her heart racing. "Leave her alone," she said firmly. The beam shifted toward her. Dalton's silhouette emerged, older, heavier, but unmistakably in control. "Ah," he said with a faint smile. "The maid who speaks in 10 tongues. You've caused quite a headache." "You stole from this company," Amara said. "And you framed her to hide it." "Framed?" Dalton chuckled. "No, dear. I simply built the stage. She stepped onto it herself. Ambition always makes the best accomplice." He took another step. "Hand over the drive, and I'll forget you were here." Victoria's voice cut through the dark. "You'll get it when hell freezes." Dalton sighed. "Then I suppose we'll do this the hard way." His hand slipped into his coat pocket. Amara didn't wait to see what came out. She grabbed the nearest fire extinguisher and pulled the pin. The blast of white powder filled the aisle, a storm of hiss and chaos. Dalton cursed, coughing, blinded. "Run!" Amara shouted. They bolted for the exit, footsteps pounding, alarms beginning to blare. Outside, the cold air hit like a slap. They jumped into the Mercedes, tires screeching as Amara floored the accelerator. "Was that a gun?" she gasped. Victoria clutched the briefcase against her chest. "Yes. And he won't stop until he gets that drive." They sped through the streets, sirens wailing somewhere far behind. The river flashed silver beside them. Victoria looked at Amara, shaken but alive. "You just saved my life," she said. "Again." Amara's hands tightened on the wheel. "Then maybe it's time you start believing in people who don't sit at your table." Victoria didn't answer. The car roared toward the bridge. Lights streaking past. Behind them, The warehouse shrank into the distance, a shadow swallowed by the night. Neither woman knew it yet, but the drive in Victoria's hand was more than evidence, it was leverage. And leverage, in the wrong hands, was as dangerous as truth itself. The Mercedes raced through the night, the hum of the engine drowning out the chaos of thought inside both women's heads. Manhattan blurred past like a storm of glass and neon, each light flashing against the wet pavement as if reflecting fragments of the truth they had just uncovered. Victoria's grip on the briefcase was white-knuckled, her breathing shallow. "He followed us," she said, glancing behind. Amara checked the mirror. A pair of headlights trailed them at a steady distance, unwavering through the traffic. "Hold on," she said, swerving down Lexington and cutting into a side street. The tires hissed over rain-slick asphalt. The second car turned after them. "He's not giving up." Victoria's voice was taut, trembling between fury and fear. "We can't go home. He knows where I live. Where the data servers are. Everything. We don't need to go home," Amara said. "We need somewhere quiet, somewhere he wouldn't expect you." "And where's that?" "Queens." Victoria blinked. "Queens? My neighborhood. Nobody watches for CEOs there." Victoria almost laughed, a short, bitter sound. "If you're wrong, then we're both out of luck," Amara said. The car veered onto the bridge, headlights slicing through mist. Behind them, the pursuing car kept its distance but didn't vanish. Victoria turned, catching a glimpse of Dalton's driver, his face hidden under a cap. She swallowed hard. "He won't stop until that drive is gone. Then we make it useless to him," Amara replied. "If we upload the video somewhere safe, he can't bury it." "You can do that?" "I can try." They crossed into Queens, the skyline shrinking behind them. The roads grew narrower, the lights dimmer, until the Mercedes no longer looked like a luxury, it looked like a misplaced star. Amara turned down a side street lined with brick row houses, the kind where curtains still moved when cars passed. She pulled into a small alley and killed the lights. "We're here." "Where is here?" "My mother's apartment." Victoria looked at her as if she'd just spoken another language. "You brought me to your home?" "It's the only place no one would think to look." They stepped out, the cold air biting their faces. The building was old but cared for, the kind of place where people greeted each other by name. Inside, the hallway smelled of lavender and laundry soap. Amara led Victoria up 3 flights of stairs and unlocked the door. The apartment was small, 2 rooms, soft light, a photo of a smiling woman in a headscarf on the wall. "My mother's sleeping," Amara whispered. "She doesn't hear much these days." Victoria hesitated by the doorway, glancing around. "You live here?" "Yes. It's cozy. It's real," Amara said simply. She set the briefcase on the table and opened her laptop. "This might take a minute." Victoria removed her coat, still stunned by the intimacy of the moment. She stood near the window, watching the rain streak the glass. "I haven't been in a place like this in years," she murmured. "A place that smells like food instead of money." Amara smiled faintly. "That's lentil soup. I made it yesterday." She typed quickly, connecting the USB drive. "If I can encrypt this and upload it to a public archive, Dalton won't be able to erase it. Even if he finds us, the video will survive." The laptop screen glowed blue, reflecting in her eyes. "But the upload speed's slow here. We'll need at least 10 minutes. "We might not have 10, Victoria said, her gaze fixed on the street. "That car hasn't moved." Amara's hands flew faster over the keyboard. "Then we make them count." Victoria turned from the window. "You're too calm for this. Panic doesn't help code run faster." "Who taught you that?" "Life." The minutes dragged like hours. Outside, the rain grew heavier, drumming on the roof. The sound of tires splashing in puddles drew closer. A shadow passed across the window. Victoria's hand went to her phone, but Amara shook her head. "If he has signal interceptors, he'll trace the call. Just trust me." The older woman hesitated, then nodded. The upload bar crawled to 62%. The headlights outside cut off, leaving only darkness. Then came a soft knock. Once. Twice. "Amara," a voice said through the door, calm and familiar. "Dalton. I know you're in there. Let's not make this ugly. I just want what's mine." "It's not his," Amara whispered. It's proof. Victoria looked toward the back of the apartment. There's no other exit. There is. Amara pointed to the fire escape. Take the drive and go. I'll hold him off. You can't. I've dealt with worse than a rich man's threats. Victoria hesitated, torn between command and conscience. If he hurts you, then at least the truth gets out. She pressed the drive into Victoria's hand. Go. Trust me. Victoria's fingers closed around it. For the first time since they'd met, she didn't give an order. She simply nodded. The knock came again, harder. Amara. Dalton's voice sharpened. I'm losing patience. Amara stepped into the hallway and opened the door a crack. You shouldn't have come here. Dalton smiled in the half-light. You're loyal. Admirable. But misplaced. Hand over the file. Too late, she said. It's already gone. His expression flickered, the first hint of uncertainty. Lies won't save you. They never do, she replied. He pushed against the door, but she braced it with her shoulder. The wood groaned. Then came the sound of a window opening behind her, the faint creak of Victoria climbing onto the fire escape. Dalton noticed. He shoved harder, forcing the door open. Amara stumbled back. He stepped inside, rain clinging to his coat, eyes cold. Where is she? Gone, Amara said. Dalton drew a pistol, the black metal gleaming. Then you're the message. Amara's pulse hammered, but she stood tall. You're wasting bullets on a maid. No, he said. I'm erasing witnesses. A sound cracked through the air, a distant siren. Rising fast. Dalton turned slightly, distracted by the flash of blue through the window. In that moment, Amara lunged, grabbing the edge of a metal tray from the counter and swinging it hard. The gun clattered to the floor. Dalton cursed, reaching for it, but Amara kicked it under the table. The door burst open as two officers stormed in, weapons drawn. NYPD. Drop it. Dalton froze, his expression calcifying into disbelief. The officers cuffed him in seconds. One of them turned to Amara. We got a tip about an armed intruder. You okay, ma'am? She nodded, breathing hard. I think so. Victoria appeared at the window, drenched but alive, holding her phone. I made the call from the alley, she said softly. You didn't think I'd leave you, did you? Amara laughed, half in relief, half in disbelief. You're full of surprises. So are you. As the officers led Dalton out, he threw one last glance over his shoulder. You think this changes anything? He sneered. Companies like hers eat truth for breakfast. Amara met his eyes, steady. Then maybe it's time someone changed the menu. He didn't reply. The door closed behind him. Silence settled, broken only by the rain easing to a drizzle. Victoria sank into a chair, exhausted. You risked your life. So did you, Amara said. We just did it differently. Victoria looked at her, really looked, the way one human sees another without rank or walls. You saved more than a company tonight, she said. You saved my soul. Amara smiled faintly. You can keep it by doing the right thing tomorrow. Victoria nodded slowly. Tomorrow, the world will know what he did. Then the truth finally wins. Amara whispered. The rain stopped. The city lights shimmered like new promises against the glass. Somewhere deep in the apartment, her mother stirred, murmuring in her sleep, unaware that her daughter had just rewritten the story of two lives. Outside, dawn began to push at the edge of the sky. By the time morning broke over New York, the city seemed unaware that something monumental had shifted during the night. The streets pulsed with their usual rhythm, horns, footsteps, ambition, but in one corner office high above Midtown, silence ruled. Victoria Hale stood by the window of her boardroom, the same room where this entire story had begun, watching the sunrise pour over the skyline like judgment. Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. The same woman, but stripped of illusion. The news had spread before dawn. Former board member Richard Dalton arrested in connection with international fraud investigation. Confidential source provides evidence. Reporters were already gathering downstairs, microphones flashing, questions sharpened like knives. Victoria had barely slept. She had given her statement to the police around 3 a.m., handed over the USB drive, and agreed to testify. Now she waited for the board's emergency session, scheduled for 8 o'clock, to determine whether she would stay or be sacrificed as the symbol of corporate failure. The door opened behind her. "They're all here," Amara said softly. She wore a simple navy suit today, borrowed from the HR department's emergency closet, her hair neatly pulled back. She looked different too, no longer invisible. Victoria turned, the corners of her mouth twitching into something that wasn't quite a smile but close enough. "You look ready for battle." "It's your battlefield, ma'am. I'm just moral support." "You've already done more than that," Victoria said, then added after a pause. "And stop calling me ma'am." Amara nodded. "All right, Victoria." The name hung between them like a truce. The boardroom filled quickly, a storm of tailored suits and wary glances. Reed sat at the head, expression unreadable. "We've reviewed the footage," he said without preamble. "It corroborates your story. Dalton and Lang manipulated contracts to redirect profits. The police are tracing the offshore accounts." "Then you know I wasn't complicit," Victoria replied evenly. "We do. But the press doesn't care about details, they care about narratives. And right now, the narrative is that Hale and Meridian's leadership let this happen." "You mean me?" "I mean the face on every headline," Reed said. "Someone must take responsibility." Amara, standing at the back, felt her pulse quicken. She could see what was coming, a quiet execution dressed as accountability. Victoria didn't flinch. "If resigning restores trust, I'll do it," she said calmly. "But understand this. You can't rebuild a company by cutting out its conscience." Reed's brows lifted. "And you're that conscience?" "No," she said, glancing toward Amara. "She is." The room turned to look at the woman by the door. Amara froze for a second, then straightened her shoulders. Reed frowned. "The maid?" "The consultant who uncovered the fraud," Victoria corrected. "Without her, this company would be bankrupt and under criminal indictment." "That doesn't make her management," another director said dryly. "We can't let janitors dictate ethics." The words struck the room like a slap. Reed's pen stilled on the table. Victoria's voice was low but fierce. "That janitor has more integrity than half the executives I've hired." "Careful, Victoria," someone muttered. "You're still on trial here." "Then let's make the trial fair," she shot back. "If you want me gone, you'll have to tell the shareholders why. And you'll have to tell them that the person who saved their investment was a woman you all ignored because of her uniform." The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. Reed exhaled slowly. "No one's firing anyone today," he said. "But you'll have to step aside temporarily. Public trust needs time." "I can live with that," Victoria said. "And the company?" "Stable for now. The Japanese partners requested to resume talks once this settles. They asked for Miss Johnson to be present." He looked toward Amara. "Seems she made an impression." Victoria turned to her. "Congratulations, Miss Johnson. You're officially our linguistic liaison." Amara blinked. "Is that a real title?" "As real as it gets," Victoria said. When the meeting ended, the others left quickly, murmuring about damage control and press statements. Only the two women remained. The adrenaline that had carried them through the night was ebbing, leaving fatigue in its place. "You didn't have to defend me," Amara said quietly. "I did," Victoria replied. "Because for once, the right person deserved the credit. Still, I don't belong in rooms like this." "Maybe you do," Victoria said, looking her in the eye. "Maybe people like you are exactly what rooms like this need." She crossed to the window again, gazing down at the reporters gathering below. "You could walk away, you know," Amara said. "Let the company fix itself." "I could," Victoria murmured. "But I've spent 30 years building something that made people small. Maybe it's time to build something that lifts them instead." The words surprised them both. A knock interrupted their thoughts. A young assistant peeked in. "Miss Johnson, there's a call for you on the lobby line." "Someone named Margaret?" Amara's heart jumped. "My mother." "Take it," Victoria said. Amara hurried out, weaving past security and flashing cameras until she reached a quiet corner by the elevators. She answered, breathless. "Mama?" The familiar voice on the other end trembled with emotion. "I saw the news, baby. They're saying you saved a company. I just wanted to hear your voice before everyone else does." Amara laughed softly. You always have perfect timing. You sound tired. I am. But it's a good kind of tired. Did they treat you right? Better than before. For now. That's all right then. Her mother said. Just remember what I taught you. Words are bridges. You built one. Didn't you? Amara felt her throat tighten. I think so. Then don't forget to walk across it yourself. The line clicked off. When she returned to the boardroom, Victoria was gathering her things. You're free for the day, she said. Go home. Rest. I have a press conference to survive. You sure you'll be okay? I'm sure of very little lately, Victoria said. But I'm sure of you. Hours later. The cameras flashed as Victoria stood at the podium. Her voice carried across the marble atrium and out into the streets. Integrity isn't a corporate slogan, she said. It's the quiet voice that speaks up when power refuses to listen. Last week, that voice belonged to someone I once underestimated. Today, she reminds me, and all of us, that truth doesn't need permission to stand tall. The clip would play on every news network by nightfall. Amara watched it from her apartment, her mother dozing beside her on the couch. She smiled faintly, her eyes drifting to the embroidered handkerchief on the coffee table. The words gleamed faintly in the lamplight. Ward is been done. She whispered them aloud. Words are binding. The world outside her window was calm now, the chaos replaced by the hum of ordinary life. Tomorrow would bring meetings, headlines, questions. But tonight, peace had returned to the small apartment in Queens. Later that week, she drove Victoria again, this time not as a maid but as an employee with a badge that bore her full name and title. The Mercedes glided through the morning traffic, sunlight catching the chrome like a promise. You know, Victoria said, glancing at her. I keep thinking about what you said, that maybe it's time I believe in people who don't sit at my table. And? Amara asked. I'd like you to sit at it from now on. Amara smiled, eyes on the road. Only if there's coffee. Strong and black? Always. They both laughed quietly, the sound warm and human. As they crossed the bridge back into Manhattan, the city ahead shimmered in gold, vast and alive. A place both cruel and full of second chances. Neither of them spoke again for a while. They didn't need to. The silence said enough that dignity had been restored, that justice, in its quiet, imperfect way, had found its voice. And as the Mercedes merged into the traffic, its reflection caught the rising sun, two women side by side, bound not by power, but by truth.